Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it very much. A friend of mine named Chris Ann Hall goes around the country giving talks, giving seminars about our liberty, our freedom, our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence. And one of the things I learned a few years ago when I went to one of these seminars is that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were not just something that the founders just came up with. They were basically based on 800 years of precedent in British law going back to before the Magna Carta. But more importantly than that, they were based on a common understanding of a Judeo-Christian worldview, which of course is based in Scripture. And I'm about to introduce a friend of mine who ministers the God's Word every Sunday morning at his church. And I just want to share a couple of things from God's Word to you before I introduce my friend. From the Gospel of Luke, and he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up. And as was his custom, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And also from the Gospel of John, Jesus answered them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son remains forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." Now it's a great honor to introduce my friend, Pastor Iverson Jackson of the Zoe Bible Church here in Little Rock, who on a regular basis tells men how to be free indeed.
Amen. Let me get this situated. We're going to take another minute to eat. And then when I get started, everybody has to stop eating. I don't allow eating during my services. So eat fast. How many of you are prior service, military? Praise the Lord. Well, you know how to eat fast. You know how to eat fast. You practice that all the time. But it is an honor to be here today, especially to be back again with you. Can you hear me good? Is that good? I'll step away for a second. But it is an honor to be here. Thank you for extending the invitation. I think this is a grand occasion where we come together and hear the things that we hear to stir us up, to get us stirred back up, to do what we are supposed to do. Because it is about we the people, and not about the politicians, but it's about we the people. So we must know what our job, what our responsibility is in this government. You know, whatever you give up, somebody's going to take, and you may not get it back. Right? So let's get started, and I want to share with you today about morality is the issue. We've heard some things about it already, but I want to just really focus on that morality is the issue, and we must fight for what we know is right. If you know it's right, then you don't mind fighting for it. I think about, I often visit the veteran cemeteries, and I look at those headstones. Some of those headstones are 18 years old, 19 years old. You know, I said, God, they didn't even get a chance to live. But they laid down their life, and we have to ask ourselves at this point, for what? Why did they lay down their life? Are we going to just let what they laid down their life for be trampled on? because that would be dishonor. So we've got to step it up, and we've got to call things the way they are, and we got to walk this thing out. All right, so I believe with all my heart that God is watching to see what we are going to do in this crucial time in our history. He's watching us. It's not like we're behind a curtain like the Wizard of Oz pulling levers. No, we're right out in the open. As a matter of fact, the whole world is watching to see what we're going to do. We're on center stage. Every generation has had to bear its burden. And this generation is no exception. 200 years ago, this nation had to bear the burden of slavery and what to do about it. So, what are the issues that we face today? The moral issues. I'm going to talk about moral issues, if you will. And really, when you talk about morality, you're talking about everything that makes this nation what it is. So, there are three that I want to deal with. And number one is freedom of religion, not just freedom of worship. Big difference. We hear that over and over, freedom of worship. And like someone said already this morning, they say it so much until we think that's the way it's supposed to be. No, it's not freedom of worship. It's not about Sunday morning, from 10 to 11 or whatever your time is, inside the walls, but it's freedom of religion. You live your religion out every day. Because if it's just freedom of worship and you happen to check out on a Friday or a Thursday and you're not in your place of worship, you might not go where you think you're going. Because you're not living out what you believe. Because you had to leave it in there until somebody came and opened the door, you could get back in. So we have to have freedom of religion. Every day it seems like there's an attack on our religious rights, our religious liberties. And how is it that there are so many Christians, so many churches, but our voice is still so silent? So quiet. California, I don't know if you know about this, but they have a Senate bill, 1146, and that bill will all but just virtually wipe out Christian schools, including upper-level education. This is essentially going to wipe them out. Think about this. In the bill, and I'm just paraphrasing some of it, it says that now if you're a Christian school, you have to post notices everywhere and in all of your literature telling prospective students that you teach this. You might say something religious that might offend them. Wait a minute, stop. It's a Christian school. But that's where it's going. But the problem is that so many influential religious leaders thought that they should not get involved with politics. And the politicians thanked them. The ungodly ones, let me say it like that. So now, the ungodly politicians, since the church just gave up its authority, abdicated its responsibilities, now they have the church and throw the hands around the throne of the church. And here's what happens. Too many religious organizations, and I'm talking about churches also, because when a bill or something comes up that's adverse to what we believe, and they say, oh, we're going to give churches an exemption. We're going to give them an exemption. And here's what happened. Too many people in the church or religious people think, well, I'm safe. And what they don't understand is an exemption is just them buying time until they can figure out a way to take from you what they exempted you from. That's all an exemption is. It's just another way to say, well, just give us time, we're going to get you, but we'll give you an exemption and make you think that you have. And so we got to quit falling for these things. We got to stop falling for it. So we have to figure this out. And then number two, protect the sanctity of life. Amen. Now, when I was growing up, a teenager in the 1970s, horror movies were pretty popular. You go, what all those movies came in, Squirms and all those type movies like that. Back in the 70s, some of y'all were in the 50s. So you probably weren't watching the teenage flicks. But anyway, you think about the horror movies, but there's nothing to compare to the gruesomeness of these abortion clinics. Right. Those horror movies couldn't touch what's taking place in these abortion clinics, in the abortion industry. And I say, God, Lord, these people that are doing this, I mean, they have to be so dead on the inside. Their souls have to be so black with sin. And who can cut a baby up, sell its parts, laugh about it, sip champagne and eat their dinner at the same time? You have to be completely and totally void of any life on the inside to do something like that. And we cannot wink. You know, let me say it like this. I could start out my decision-making process about who I'm going to vote for with that right there. Amen. So you know that eliminates one of them already. I mean, selling baby parts to the highest bidder. That's what you do to beef with cattle. Sell them to the highest bidder. I was at Fort Lewis 2004. We were training cadets right before they get commissioned to go through this last bit of training. And one of the things when you get to a fort, when you check in, you're going to be there for a while. When you go through in-briefing. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. They bring everybody in, and they tell you how you are to comport yourself on this post. This is what allowed, all these things here. And one of the things they told us about this, now, you're going to see these ant mounds. We have a particular type of ant that lives here on Fort Lewis, and they are protected. And to let you know how protected they are, if you should pick up a stick, now some of them are 6 feet tall. They make the mounds, the ants are real big, they make the mounds out of sticks. If you should pick up a stick and throw it and hit that ant mound, disturb that ant mound in any kind of way, you could be fined $20,000 for ants. And I said, God, the government will fine us $20,000 for throwing a stick in a stinking ant pile, but they'll pay Planned Parenthood $500 million to kill babies. And we think morality is not the issue. Ants are protected, but babies are not. $50,000? That would have wiped out all our pocket change. Then our third issue, the integrity of marriage. Marriage is one man, one woman, no exceptions. I don't care what the government says. God says, remember David's presentation? God first. God said, one man, one woman, no exceptions. No exceptions. And you know, everybody remember last year, right? The Supreme Court, and the question was asked, well, if you do this, what about all the other things that are going to happen because you do this? Well, yeah, that we do, yeah. Well, that some other things may happen. I heard on the radio yesterday, this woman now wants to marry her son. And guess what the argument they're using? The same one the other group used. We're not hurting anybody. We're consenting adults. So what do you say to them? So what do you say to them? And we think morality. I mean, the picture, your mama. See, they were never after equal rights in marriage. What they were after is destroying the institution of marriage. And we get these weak, liver-licking Christians talking about, well, it's okay. They want to destroy marriage. Because marriage represents Jesus and the church. And that's what they can't handle. That's what they can't handle. Biblical marriage is the cornerstone for any society or culture. It is what causes us to grow and prosper. And it is the safest environment to raise children, and it is the least abusive relationship that anybody can be in. The statistics are pouring in now about all these same-sex, whatever they want to call them. They're not marriages. All this stuff. They're pouring in, and all the abuse that's taking place, not reported. Not reported. The things that happen to children, not being reported. Not being reported. That's why you can't get your news from those folks. You gotta get it from folks with sense. But we cannot fall for this either. Well, it's the law of the land. There's nothing we can do. No, you know what? Somebody that says that, you know what they're really saying? They're saying, well, it's the law of the land, so let's just sit on our hands. There's always something you can do. Always something you can do. We'll see. Now, so those are the three major issues that this generation is going to have to deal with. And I'll talk about them as I go through this. But as I said earlier, 200 years ago, the moral issue of the day was slavery. Now, the Quakers, thank God for the Quakers. They were the first to stand their ground against the ills of slavery, even though there were a few Quakers that owned slaves. Now listen to me. They faced down their own brother. If your brother's wrong, your brother's wrong. And we have to decide, I'm going to be on God's side, which is the right side, or I'm going to try to please men. And even though they had come against their own people, they did it. They said slavery is immoral and it is against the law of God. They would not be silenced, and soon the other abolitionists joined them. And you can never be concerned that we're standing alone. What difference does that make anyway? So they were willing to fight until slavery became a national issue and that could no longer be compromised with. Because slavery reached a peak and they said, okay, that's it. We can't go any further with this. And we know what happened. We had a civil war. But there was a price to pay for them standing. In 1688, Germantown Quakers, they had a petition against slavery. And it was the first protest against African American slavery made by a religious body in the English colonies. This petition. Four Quakers signed it, representing their group. It was forwarded to the monthly, quarterly, and yearly meetings without any action. They wouldn't even take it up. So did those Quakers say, well, it's the law of the land, there's nothing we can do about it? No, they didn't. But you know what they did? When they wrote their petition, they said, now this is based on the golden rule. And what's the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. And all you have to do is trade places with your slave one afternoon and you'll set them free. That's all you have to do. If you want babies to be cut up, just let somebody cut you up. And we won't have to deal with you anymore. But listen, decades passed before slavery was finally abolished in the Quaker community. Now, that's the first place it was abolished. But they never allowed the moral argument against slavery to rest. They never let people forget slavery is wrong. When they even told them, listen, if you're going to have slaves, at least educate them. At least treat them fair. At least give them decent housing, give them decent food. Treat them like people. Why? Because it's morally right. It's morally right. Now, I was in a meeting earlier this week with Dr. Ron Myers. He's the founder and chairman of the National Juneteenth Independence Day. Anybody who you don't know what Juneteenth is? Because it's really important to me.
I know.
You don't know what Juneteenth is?
Oh, I do.
Well, just very quickly. Juneteenth, June 19th. 1965, the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1963, 18. Well, I hope it wasn't 1965. Glory. But 18, I did that the other day at church. I kept saying 19, and after the service was over, and my wife says, "You kept saying 19. I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me I was saying it?" I didn't want to interrupt you. So, okay. All right. So, 18, where was I at? Oh, the Emancipation Proclamation, 1863. But by the time it got to the last slaves down in Texas, it was 1965, June 19th, 1965. What is it? 1865. What is it about 1965? It was a good year. I'll take your word for it. But anyway, he said this. He said, "I'm so thankful for the Quakers that they stood against slavery." He said, "Every time I see that white man on that oatmeal box," he said, "I kiss him." And you know what I think about? I said, now, 100 years from now, who's going to be kissing our picture? Because we stood for something. Because we wouldn't let the issue go. Yeah. 60 million babies are dead, but they didn't die without somebody speaking out. I know their blood is crying out to God for them, but somebody here on earth should be crying out for them also. I believe that the people in this room have as strong convictions as those Quakers. That you're not going to sit on your hands. You're not going to just allow people to make laws that are against God and do nothing. We can't do that. We can't. That's why we're here. So let's look at a few things. In a message from John Adams to the officers of the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Division, the militia of Massachusetts, dated October 11, 1998. 1798. I just thought. Some of y'all are eating so hard you're not listening. But he said this, John Adams said this. He said, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other."
Yeah.
It won't work. You have to have number one. Or he said, this government will not work. John Adams was saying that not even our Constitution can withstand the rotting, degenerative effect of unchecked immorality. It can't take it. And here, what do we have today? If you feel good, do it. Marry your son. What, you gonna have the father marry the son next? If that doesn't make you sick in your stomach, there's something wrong. John Adams knew that morality and religion were the only thing that could bridle the lust-driven, sinful nature of man. It's the only thing. Today we've been told not to bring up moral and social issues.
Oh, brother, yes.
Just stick to the economy and jobs. Morality and religion is what allows the economy to grow. And it promotes fair trade and wages. Think about it like this. A moral employer does not need to be told by the government what to pay his employees.
That's right.
That's right.
And I think about this. My head almost explodes. Every time I hear the word minimum wage. Did you hear the first word? Minimum. Why would you go out and make yourself a minimum person?
Yeah.
That's what we did in high school. We went work at Burger. I worked at Burger King. My friends worked at McDonald's. We weren't looking for a dental plan. We were looking for money so we could take our girlfriends out. what he says about religion. Because the religion, the Bible says, a laborer is worth his hire. And if you want to make more, make yourself worth more. It's simple. It's simple enough. And morality. A moral employee will not slack off. Will not slack off when he's supposed to be working. A moral employee will not steal from his employer. Morality, talking about jobs, there are certain businesses, some businesses have to close down because they have so much graft. They have so much stealing on the inside. But if you apply morality, you say, no, I'm an employee. If I want that, I have to buy it just like anybody walking through the door. Morality, that's the issue. A man with any morals about himself is not going to leave his family and say, well, the government will take care of him. Not if you have the morals. If you have the morals, if you're a man, you'll go get a second job. You'll go get a third job. Well, I don't care if you didn't get the 2 hours of sleep. You're a man. Man up. Friends, morality is the issue. 200 years ago, everybody knew that slavery was immoral. Everybody knew that slavery was immoral. But Southern slave owners and their representatives in Congress declared that slavery was a necessary evil. At least that's what they said at first. That's what they said at first. But as they continued to profit from this necessary and ungodly evil, and this immoral institution, they later called slavery a positive good. Well, they hadn't worked the fields lately, had they? But this is what happens, friends, because things are done on regularity, we think that it's normal, it's natural. No, it's not. That doesn't make something natural. It doesn't make it normal. There was no question about the immorality, the indignity, the injustice of slavery, but we went on with it anyway. No question about abortion, no question about same-sex unions or whatever. I can't bring myself to say marriage. No question that those things are immoral, but we keep going on with them anyway. There was no question that this issue was dividing the nation at some point. It would send the nation to civil war. No question about it. But we went on with it anyway. And that war, the Civil War, cost us more lives than all the wars combined over the next 150 years. A moral issue. A moral issue. 150 years. Morality is that line that cannot be crossed. It cannot be moved right. We don't choose how to live and then call it morality. Taking an immoral behavior and attaching to a moral cause does not change the immorality of their behavior. It doesn't change at all. Think about this. In today's politically correct society, everybody's offended about something. Oh my goodness. Just open your mouth and say good morning to somebody. And I guarantee you that somebody will find it offensive or that you're being insensitive. I just say good morning, but I like for people to say good morning, dear. Now, I usually don't give a rip about political correctness. Being politically correct, I just like to be correct. And, I'm struggling up here because I keep saying 19 when it should be 18, but I got all of you to help me with that. But, thank you. Thank you very much. So I really don't care about being politically correct. But I am highly offended. I am highly offended that anyone would compare their sexual behavior to an entire ethnic group's skin color and call it civil rights. I am highly offended. And that's hard to do. I'm offended that any judge or politician would even consider extending civil rights to a person's behavior. It's immoral. Ethnicity and skin color It's not a choice. Behavior is. Behavior is. Now, even if we wanted to, people of color could not go into a closet because there's no closet big enough to hold over 30 million people. So we couldn't go in the closet if we wanted to. It ain't that big. So you better believe I'm offended that any individual would equate my skin color with their behavior. Behavior is something that intelligent beings can control. And if it wasn't controllable, a closet wouldn't help you anyway. Straight jacket would, but a closet wouldn't. Now, I served 25 years in the military. And there's no doubt in my military mind, as we say, that there were people in the armed forces that were homosexuals. But they controlled their behavior as required by regulation, just like everybody else. Most of them served honorably, heroically, and with dignity and character, just like most everybody else. Some of you made a career out of it, serving 20 years or more, and they never made their sexual orientation an issue. They did their jobs, they served their country, just like everybody else. And listen, in the military, you can be put out of the military for any number of disapproved behaviors. DWI, fraternization, adultery, spousal abuse, or any other type of behavior that's not conducive to military lifestyle. So it's not, it wasn't just if you're a homosexual, we're going to put you out. No, any of those things get you put out. And all of them are what? Behavior. Every single one of these are behavior. And if you want a good military career, you control your behavior. That's simple. So don't tell me that immoral, ungodly, unnatural behavior is a civil rights issue. It is not. It is controllable behavior, and we can do it. Now, how can we call ourselves a civilized, sophisticated nation when we refuse to protect the most helpless among us, the babies in the womb? The 1973 Roe versus Wade decision is the 1857 Dred Scott decision of our day. Right. Just like the Supreme Court said that black people were not persons but property, the Supreme Court said that an unborn baby is not a person but a thing to be discarded at the whim of the mother. Friends, we can't stand up on that type of immorality. And until that decision is reversed, America will never be at peace. Just like there could be no lasting peace in America until slavery was abolished. Always going to be an issue. The generation that ended slavery knew that it was immoral and affront to God, the complete opposite of every principle and belief that this great nation was founded upon. They knew that slavery was a deadly disease in the soul of this nation, an odor so foul that it reached into the heavens, into the very nostrils of God. They had to unite and do something to bring this abominable behavior to an end, no matter what the cost. And my friends, we've been here before. We've come to that place and time again in our nation's life where the very soul of our nation is at stake. If we don't come together and defeat the enemies of freedom, we will become the slaves and they will become our masters. That's what's going to happen. So what's going to be written about this generation? What will be said of those of us in this room? Will we be known as the generation that allowed the ship to sink? The ones that gave up the fort? Or will this generation, will our names be worded to be written down beside the names that fought at Bunker Hill, the names that survived the winter at Valley Forge? And what about Gettysburg, the Alamo, D-Day? What about Benghazi? Will our names be written beside theirs? The moral issues that today that unite us, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, the integrity of marriage, are far greater than the issues that divide us. From the first settlers, different groups opposed slavery for different reasons. Slavery was immoral for some on religious grounds. Slavery was immoral for others on economic grounds. Slavery was immoral for others on humanitarian grounds. These groups had different reasons for being against slavery, but they all knew that slavery was immoral. Morality is the issue. It was the issue then, and it is still the issue today. So we're going to quit or run away because we may be outnumbered, or because the situation seems hopeless, or maybe because people call us names. What do you think some people are calling me because I've been here with you? I know what you're thinking. And I tell people who say that, I say, I appreciate that. But we've got to fight because we know what's right. We have to fight because America is worth fighting for. And with God on our side, there is no way that we can lose. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you so much, Pastor Jackson. That was fantastic.